All right, welcome everybody. You can see three of us, hopefully, on video. And we've got people still joining, so perhaps we'll just give it a 30 seconds.
Can you close the meeting room, Darren, so people join automatically?
Yes. There we go, that should work. Oh, you see Rebecca. All right, we'll make a start. So welcome everyone to the first in a series of webinars for the South Waikato. This is brought to you thanks to the South Waikato District Council and of course South Waikato Investment Fund Trust. So this is a series designed to provide the business community with a forum to ask questions and hopefully just learn some more and pick up tips on how to get through this this crisis, is I guess the best word to describe it. Our business is like everyone else's business. We've been affected, and you can be sure that that we're working hard as well to get through. So in terms of format, we're gonna keep this to about an hour. So perhaps no more than an hour. So perhaps 30 minutes on our top 10 tips with Fire Station, and then open it up for Q&A. Rachel, do you want to explain how the Q&A is going to work?
Cool. So if you haven't used Zoom before, there is a chat function. So if you wave your mouse along the bottom of the screen, there's a little button that says chat, click the chat, and then a pop-up will appear somewhere on your screen. On my screen, it's on my right. And you can either message people individually or message everyone. If you're happy for everyone to see what question you're asking, just send it to everyone because it makes it easier for us. But there might be some questions that you would prefer not to know who asked it. If that's the case, please just message me privately, and then we will answer that question if we have time and open it up to Darren to answer. So any questions about how this is working, just message me privately.
Yeah. And so we do have the ability to switch people's, and you can do the same, unmute yourself or mute yourself, but I think we'll just keep everybody on mute. It's entirely up to you whether you have your camera rolling. We can see some people got the camera turned on. That's up to you. But yeah, use the chat window for any questions. So now I just want to hand over to Francis from the South Waikato Investment Fund Trust, just to say a few words. Francis.
Yep. Thank you, Darren and Rachel, for helping to organise this. So the SWIFT, the South Waikato Investment Fund Trust, we've been working, you can imagine, fairly hard over the last week with Paul and Jenny from the South Waikato District Council to work out what our response, collective response can be in this time, with a particular focus on the business side of it. And just to back up a little bit, we like to think we're reasonably well connected around the region and with central government, and what we're finding in the South Waikato is that we're actually quite ahead of the pack, so reasonably proud of that. So these events, they'll be organised by the South Waikato District Council, Paul Bowden and Jenny the Mayor from there, myself and Bruce Sherman, Chairman of SWIFT, Rebecca Garner, the event girl, and Darren and Rachel from Fire Station. We've also got another person, Stuart Ashton, who is from the council, who's leading the what they call the welfare group, with a particular focus on obviously welfare, well-being, safety, those types of things. So just a couple of things. There is a website, swnz.co. On there you'll find the COVID-19 resources. We've got a business response checklist. And if you haven't done so, if you could register on there, what we're looking to do is build a database of email contacts so that we can send info out directly to you. And then the other thing, just the last thing I'll touch on is Swift will be registering as what we call a service provider for the NZT Callaghan Business Voucher Scheme. Now, what that means is if you need expert advice around accounting, legal, HR, those areas, the government has announced a $5,000 100% subsidy on that. So it means that if you need, you've got some challenging advice or support that you need, or business continuity, we can help get access to that. So give us probably through till the end of the week to get that established. But in the meantime, Darren Fire Station is registered as a business provider in that program, so we can get things moving straight away. So that's it from me. Over to you, Darren, to carry on with the webinar, please.
Thank you, Francis. Sorry, it helps if I turn my microphone back on. Okay, so thank you all again for joining us. This is our first time hosting one on this size scale. I did one yesterday with 6 people and it seemed to go fairly well. But just apologies in advance if we inadvertently click on the wrong thing or technology dies on us. So yeah, so just a reminder, any questions, use the chat window and we'll get into it. Just one thing though before I do start, just a reminder, yeah, this is going to be a series of these. And we've looked at different options. So for instance, we think perhaps the next one would be quite beneficial to use, get an HR advisor like the Employers and Manufacturers Association in to talk a bit about what you do with employees, because I know there's lots of questions and concerns, and the advice, of course, can shift on a daily basis. But if there's other topics, other things that you're particularly interested in, let us know via that email address that Francis mentioned, or just pop us a comment in the chat window. So I'll get straight into it. I've got a few notes in front of me, so apologies if I look down rather than the camera. I'm going to start with a bit of a disclaimer here. We are, of course, in extraordinary times. It's unprecedented. It's uncharted. Pick your term. And if we've been in business previously, we can look back to perhaps the GFC for some indication or guidance on what happens in a recession. But this is going to be a lot different, and nobody knows how long it's going to last, and of course what impact it's going to have. And depending on what business you're in and what industry you're in, it could be catastrophic right now. Or it could be, it's business as usual, but everybody's working from home and everything in between. So the following is our general suggestions, but for any professional advice, it would be our advice, of course, would be to make sure you check in with your accountant, lawyer, or a financial advisor. So that's our sort of disclaimer. Now, tip number 1. Trusted sources of information. You may have seen, particularly if you're on Facebook, a lot of misinformation around. There's plenty of ways to cure yourself or prevent the virus, but we think the best thing to do is to use trusted sources of information. And the government set up a number of sites. I'm not going to run through them, but particularly business.govt.nz has got some good information. Work and income, and I'll come back to this in a moment, managing the wage subsidies, tax relief with Inland Revenue, Ministry of Health for health-related information. So there is a range. So we will circulate the list. And we're always adding to it, and we'll add, of course, the South Waikato website Francis mentioned. But yeah, so in the first instance, our suggestion is, of course, is to check there first and to check there regularly, because, of course, the situation is changing fairly rapidly. I have been told yesterday that EMA, or the Employers and Manufacturers Association, who do employment advice, amongst other things, they've opened up their 0800 advice line to everyone. So normally, from what I understand, it's restricted to members, but that's now open to everyone. So,
can I just jump in, Darren?
Go on.
All these links we will share on our Facebook page, and the council will share on their Facebook page as well, so that we can get those links out to you so you know where to go.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. Number 2, apply for the wage subsidy. So if you are one of the rare businesses that hasn't done that, then please do it. You can do it through Work and Income website. If you go to their homepage, there's a large COVID red button at the top of the page. You just click there and you just follow your nose through the page, and essentially there's a large declaration that you need to fill out, and that's basically it. In terms of feedback, I had one person yesterday comment that they applied start of last week and they're still waiting, and then others got it within sort of 48 hours. So I would imagine they're doing their best to work through the subsidies. But the other point too is, if you traditionally haven't had a wage on a PAYE basis within the business, for whatever reason, maybe the business couldn't support it, you've started out, or you just had your accountant wash it up at the end of the year. I've got somebody checking on this, but in the first instance, perhaps it's worth applying for yourself as well if you're in that situation. But do check with your accountant, because they of course will have a view on that. So that's number 2. Flying through. All right, number 3, managing cash flow for the next 30 days. So this is a huge one. How do you get through the next month or possibly longer? And what does that look like? And for many businesses, we haven't taken the time to sit down and do what's called a cash flow forecast. Of course, many banks ask for this, and it is just a good discipline to do anyway. So now's a good time to start. And what this is all about is understanding your liquidity or your cash position. So in simple terms, it's, what do I have outstanding? What cash would I have in the bank, obviously? What can I potentially liquidate? And then less, what do I owe? And when do I owe it? Now, you can go on the Google and just Google cash flow forecast template, and you'll get 10,000 hits. And that's probably the easiest thing to do, is just start with Excel and have a play. So in terms of working your way through that, I suggest go through your debtors and your creditors. So go through those who owe you money and those you owe money to. So with your debtors, consider what I'm calling a brutally conservative assessment of their likelihood to pay. So in normal times, of course, we would know who are late payers and who are good payers, but that assessment's out the window. So it's more a case of who really are likely to pay and who aren't. And we did this last week ourselves with the 20th, and we've actually been pleasantly surprised so far. There's been a number of clients who have paid us, and we thought perhaps we might get pushed out, but we haven't. So that's actually been quite good. And then as part of this, it's also about understanding, of course, what's our future work likely to be, and I'll come back to that point in a moment. Now, with your creditors, with your expenses, maybe the easiest thing is to jump into your accounting software, print off your profit and loss, start with your largest expenses, and perhaps go through an exercise of categorizing into essential versus discretionary. And as to what's essential and what's discretionary, that's your call. And obviously, how you categorize may be impacted by, is this 4 weeks in lockdown? Is it 8 weeks, 12 weeks? We obviously don't know at this stage. The media, I think last night, were saying we should be counting on it being longer than 4 weeks. And so making those assessments, because often there are things in there that perhaps we are essential day to day, but are not essential right now. We've got a document destruction bin sitting in our office, which is not going to be used for the next 4 weeks at least. So yeah. And the other advice around this is going through each of those expenses, each supplier, and just asking them for assistance. And Rachel did this for us last week, and we had mixed responses. I think it was Adobe. Adobe offered us 3 months free subscription, and that's
straight away,
yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah. Others, including a power company, were go away. So, there's, but you don't know until you ask. So why not ask the question? And particularly if you've got premises, if you've got a landlord, ask them the question. We were fortunate that ours came round and eventually, yes. But
can I just jump in, because I'm the one that did all those calls, and the way I approached it was, I want us both to get through this, so how can we help each other? If we all look at trying to pay something to all our suppliers, we're all going to have money coming in, and it's very much trying to work together to actually get you both through. So hopefully some of your suppliers will come on board as well, and just help us manage our cash flows, because we're all hurting right now.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Rach. And the other one is the bank, but I've got a whole point on banks in a moment. So once you've been through that process, perhaps it's then about creating a weekly cash flow forecast. It could be monthly, because a lot of businesses like ours are on a monthly cash cycle, but certainly weekly is probably more relevant at the moment. So what funds do I expect in this week? What do I absolutely have to pay out? And then how is that going to affect my my bank balance or overdraft position? And doing that for the next 4 weeks. And through that process, you'll start to get a feel for what is your weekly cash burn rate, or in other words, what does it take on a minimum to get through each week? And from there, you can actually start to work out your break-even point for your business. And I know for many, we never really sat down and worked that out, but it's, again, it could be situational. So it could be the break-even for the next 4 weeks, or it could be a break-even if this becomes protracted as well. Just a final comment on this. On a call yesterday, a client commented that a couple of years ago they'd set up a rainy day fund of 1 month's revenue, and they thought at the time that was they were being perhaps a little excessive, and it was quite difficult to put that aside. But they, looking back in hindsight, they're glad they did. But now it's probably, if anything, a little inadequate for what they need. So that's perhaps a thought for the future. And I know it's challenging because a lot of businesses are undercapitalized. We just don't have that sort of free cash, but perhaps we should be putting that aside. Okay, tip number 4, engaging with your bank. Now there may be a banker on the call, and so I'm going to keep this pretty general. I've elected to talk about this because I used to be a managing partner with BNZ, which is like a regional manager. So I worked there for about 15 years. And over the last few years, we've helped a few clients with the banks. So, but anyway, the first point would be to talk to your bank. Just to talk to, if you can, get in front of a branch manager in terms of a retail branch, or if not, if you've got a business banker, then talk to your business banker. If you don't feel like you're getting traction from either of them, escalate, go up, just go up the chain. You should be able to find out who's in charge, and just go up the chain. The banks are under a lot of pressure at the moment to help, and so we need that help. So we need to ask the question. In general terms, sometimes the easiest thing for a banker to do is to give you a temporary overdraft, or increase your existing overdraft limit from anywhere from 30 to 90 days. And this varies by bank, but they usually have some level of discretion locally where they can approve quickly a temporary overdraft or an increased overdraft, because in normal trading terms, we might have had a large debtor that pushes us out, or we get a large order that we need to fund, and we go to the bank and say, can you help me out for the next month or 2 months or whatever it is, and they can usually say yes or no very quickly. So that's often the easiest thing for them to do, and that's exactly what our bank did for us. Otherwise, beyond that, you're starting to look at other options like interest only, so removing the need to make principal reductions on your loans, a repayment holiday. Now, my comment on this is this should be a last resort, because all you're doing is kicking the can down the road in terms of your eventual amount that you need to repay for the loan. There's no interest-free options. So if you're not paying interest now, or even if you're not making principal reductions, then interest is going to mount up, and it'll add up very, very quickly indeed. So, but if that's the only option you've got, then it may be worth considering. But just be aware, of course, that it's going to add up very quickly. The other thing is perhaps as talking about fees. If you've got a significant bank fee in your business, for whatever reason, have a discussion around that. Some banks are offering concessions around fee waivers. So again, why not ask the question? So every bank has set up a dedicated website from their homepage. It should be easily accessible. We've got a list of them. And you check there first and see what they're willing to offer. It's usually split between personal and business options, but go through and have a look at both, because often we bank personally with the same bank our business is with, or if not, we're a different bank. Have a look at that and be armed with that before you contact them, because that can be a good guide as to what they're willing to do. But as always, it'll be subject to their respective lending policies. So what one bank may be willing to do, another bank may not. So they've still need to make sure they adhere to their lending policies. The other thing, of course, you may have seen is they've got the ability to extend a loan to businesses as long as your turnover is between $250,000 and I think 80 million. They can lend up to $500,000 per business, and the Crown is going to stand behind that to about 80%, if you were to default in the future. So if you need that, access it, because they're promised to be reasonable in terms of the interest rates on that. It may not be as competitive as a normal situation if you've got a house available security, but it's worth potentially exploring that as well. So again, those will be subject to the individual bank's policies. So that's pretty much tips for engaging with your bank. How are we going for time? Looking all right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Tip number 5, business planning. So I've sort of split this into 2 parts. The first part is a business continuity plan. Now, it might be tempting to think, well, it's too late. We're in the crisis. Why bother doing that? But we don't know how long this is going to go for, and what is the other impacts of what's happening. And I've got to say, business.govt.nz has an excellent description and a list of all the steps that you go through to create a business continuity plan. It's a nice summary, and it's a good resource there. So it includes all 10 steps, including contingency planning. And that's essentially where you say, if this is an important part of my business, maybe it's a machine or person or whatever it is, customer, what happens if we lose that, or I'm no longer able to access that, and what's my plan B for that part of my business? And that's what contingency planning is in a nutshell. The other thing which they don't mention on that site is some sort of risk management plan. So that's where we go through each of the individual risks to our business, and we categorize them, and they've got there's a nice little formula for doing that, where we look at the likelihood of something terrible happening, and the impact or the consequence on our business. And by doing that, we can then decide what response we might need for each of those risks So that's a business continuity plan and a risk management plan. So I still think that's a useful exercise to do. If you've got more immediate things that you should be working on, that's fine, but we'll put it in there. The other thing is perhaps looking over the medium term. We are going to come through this. We are going to come out the other side. We will. The lockdown will be removed at some point, maybe region by region. Businesses will slowly be able to trade again. So perhaps if you've got the time at the moment, this could be an opportunity to step back from the business and say, what are my plans going forward? How sustainable is my business or my business model? With the benefit of hindsight, is there anything I could have done differently, or anything I can do differently moving forward to improve the resilience of my business? And again, if you just Google business plan templates, there's a million of them. So it's that old adage of working on your business. We may have the opportunity at home to do that. So if you have time, perhaps consider doing some planning. All right, tip 6, alternative revenue. So many of us have seen our revenue either grind to a halt, or entirely, or in a part of our business. We've certainly had that impact. Or we're going to see it drop away over the next few months. So what can we do? So I've got a couple of suggestions here. So the first one is, and again, this could be part of planning, is the old SWOT analysis. So either dive into that, or at the very least, list my business and my people's strengths, or your own strengths. What are we really good at, and what can we potentially leverage in the future going forward? So this could be an exercise you could do with your team in a forum like this. And as we go through the strengths, identify those which are truly unique, because those are, of course, our points of difference. And these are the things that, if we're going to work on our businesses and improve them, we get more bang for our buck by focusing on the strengths. So that's one thing. The other thing is, there's a wonderful book called The Innovator's Method by Nathan Furr and Jeff Dyer. There's a number of books in this sort of field, but this one I particularly like because it gives you a really easy approach to innovate around new products and services, and we all need that right now. And it introduces a concept called the minimal viable product in the book. And essentially what that is it asks the question is, what can I do to create a new product or service using the minimum amount of resources required to get a customer to buy? And a simple example of this is, rather than investing a lot of time, energy, and money into building a brand new product or service and then launching to market and figuring out whether or not anyone wants it, we just advertise or create a flyer to market a potential new product and then see what the potential uptake is by asking for a deposit or asking people to subscribe or become one of the first 100 customers, whatever. And that can give us a good indication, without spending a lot of time and energy and cost, whether our potential new product or service has a market. But also in that book, they go in a lot more detail around innovation. There's another neat book called Edge Strategy by Alan Lewis and Dan McCone. That's about how do we innovate at the edges of our core competencies. We teach this one as well, and one example is thinking about the customer journey. So often our customers go on a journey with us, and it might be very quickly, or it might be over a period of weeks, months, or years. And it's about saying, okay, so before they start that journey with us, what can we offer them to encourage them to begin that journey earlier? Or at the end, how can we extend the customer journey with us? What else can we offer to keep them with us longer? So for our business, for example, it's about saying, for instance, we don't do a lot at the moment around helping businesses exit. And of course, up until now, there's we've got the baby boomer generation who are looking to potentially exit from their businesses. And so therefore for us, it's about, we might be already working with them, but how can we spend more time helping them exit? So, and that's just one example. There's a lot more in that book. So that was the Innovator's Method and Edge Strategy. All right, tip number 7, should you stop your marketing? And I'm going to hand over to our marketing guru, Rachel, for this one.
Thanks, Darren. Probably the biggest question businesses have right now, whether they're essential services, whether you're working from home, or whether you can't actually trade while we're in lockdown, is should you continue your marketing? And the simple answer is yes. In some form, you should still be doing your marketing activity. But you will need to modify what you were doing. And depending on your situation and depending on your cash flow is whether you're only going to use those unpaid marketing channels such as social media and your emails, or whether you're actually going to start or continue using your paid advertising like Google Ads or Facebook social media advertising. So I've sort of broken these tips down depending on what stage, what type of business and how you're affected. Essential services. If you're an essential service or part of your business is an essential service and you are still actively trading, you should be doing some sort of marketing messages. You should be talking to your customers about what you're providing and how you can provide it. How are you keeping them safe? How are you keeping your staff safe? And also just that try and be relatively upbeat in some of your messages. There's so much doom and gloom in people's social media feeds. Now's the time to try and be appropriate, don't be tone deaf, but what ways can you connect with your audience in a positive way in the current situation? If you're working from home, just like Darren and I are, we can continue to work in our business, albeit in a different format. So yes, we can continue to market our services, but just be really careful on your tone and what you were saying. You don't want to alienate people at this point in time. I'm actually telling clients and people I'm talking to that this point in time right now is an opportunity to really grow your tribe and get lifelong loyalty. The way you treat your customers, the way you act as a business will definitely create some really loyal customers. So try and use it as an opportunity that when we're out of this, that you can actually grow your audience and grow your market. Also listen, if you're on social media and you're doing posts, listen to how people are responding to those. If you're starting to get negative comments, think about what you're doing and how you can change that. If you're working from home and still sending out goods, products that you make or ship in, just be really careful. I have seen lots and lots of businesses still promoting that they're sending out their products and they're not considered essential service, and their Facebook posts are just full of negative comments, full of why are you still trading, you shouldn't be trading. So just tread in that space quite carefully. Tweak your messages and what you're saying in social media and in your emails. You need to focus on providing support, encouragement, and helpful information. Probably the biggest group that's impacted in their marketing right now are those that can't trade at all. But it's really important that you do continue to do something, because we will get through this and you still want to be in their mind. You still want to be top of mind for the product or service that you offer. So if you don't have the funds or the cash flow to look at paid advertising or, but advertising on social media and Google Ads, continue to post on your social media channels, continue to email out to your database and connect with them, because you want to be top of mind. Depending on what service you can do, is there some way that you can still take orders that you can't process right now, but you can process once we're ready to trade again? Is there any way, that you can do that so you've got orders coming through? But ultimately, this is the perfect time to actually be working on your marketing and making sure your marketing assets are good to go for when we get out of this situation. So many times business owners get so bogged down in doing their doing. Marketing always gets left in the too hard basket or not enough time basket. So use this time to look at your brand story and do your marketing planning. Work on your purpose, your why, who your target audience is. And especially now, how is COVID-19 going to affect your target audience even when we come out of lockdown? If your full discretionary spend item, so people may not have the money to buy from you, how is that going to affect your target market and ultimately your revenue? You know, this is part of the business continuity planning Darren was talking about earlier. Work on your online assets. It's a perfect time to do an overhaul on your website and your web copy. If you don't have a website, now's the time to actually look at getting one. Shopify is offering a 3-month free trial right now. So if you don't have a website and you want to have a go at doing it yourself, jump onto Shopify. It probably wouldn't be one that I would usually recommend straight away, but it's free for 3 months. And if cash flow is an issue, it's a good opportunity. So look at your website content. Work on your search engine optimization. So that's making sure that you're found in Google search results. Do all this work that we don't normally have time for and make the most of this period so that when we're out, you can hopefully get some sales going and hit the ground running.
Cool. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. So just a reminder, we are recording this session, so we know there's a lot potentially we're throwing at you. So you might be frantically writing notes down, but we will distribute and the link out on social media, so that you can potentially rewatch this in your own time. And then just
and don't forget, if you've got any specific questions, to pop them in that chat function.
Yeah. I see Rebecca's put a few in there. All right. We'll come
Sorry.
we'll come
I was
back
busy
to those.
talking.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, so tip number 8. So just building on Rachel's comment around potentially online marketing. So if you've got a retail business or any other kind of business, is there a way you can leverage your offering or skills to sort of pivot in the startup world? We call it pivot to online. So for us, obviously, it's about us taking our face-to-face workshops like we do in South Waikato and saying, how can we deliver those in an online format? I was speaking with a florist last week, and so we were talking about, can you run, could you start offering some florist type training online? Obviously, you're limited to what you can rip out of the garden in terms of foliage and flowers, but anyway, it was that sort of thing. So this is all under sort of managing customer relationships. So if you've got repeat customers or your business to business, then I think there's a worthy exercise going through and asking, well, who are my top 5, 10, 20 customers? You probably can name them anyway, but let's work that out in terms of their value from a revenue, margin, and even maybe a bottom line profitability. I mean, when was the last time we sat down and worked out what do we actually earn off each of those customers? How valuable are they to me? And that can be a useful exercise at any time. We can often think that the biggest customer by revenue is our biggest bottom line, but biggest contribution to our bottom line, but sometimes they're not. In fact, they may even cost us money to have. So perhaps consider doing the exercise. Ask, what is their strategic value to my business? How important is this customer? Sometimes it's not a dollar figure. It's they provide other value in other ways. And then from there, for those good customers, what contact strategy or even what sort of relationship strategy should I have for each one? So how often should I be talking to them? How often should I be contacting them? How can I help them get through this? How can I demonstrate, what actions can I take that will show my commitment to what they do in getting them through? And these are the times that can really make a difference. I mean, I'll never forget a customer recounting a story to me of, and this was a dairy farmer when Whakatane flooded, and they had their banker go out and at 5 o'clock in the morning and help milk the cows every day, and they said, we will never forget that, never ever forget that action. So what could you do for your good customers to help get them through? Okay, tip number 9, almost there. Staying connected with your staff. So if this is your first time with remote staff, it can be quite daunting, particularly if you've been seeing them every single day and you don't have that contact anymore. So the question is, how can you stay connected with each staff member in a way that's supportive but not intrusive? So you may have been tempted to consider installing some sort of key logging software, or how can I access their web camera to find out actually what they're doing, and how can I trust them that they're actually going to be working from home? But we do need to trust them, and every business should operate in a high trust model. So how can you connect? So that's obviously just about talking to them and asking them the question. Now, the other thing to consider too is, even if your business is continuing to operate and you're managing to pay your team their full rates, they may have partners or other family members who have lost their jobs, or whose jobs are, on the brink, and so they're feeling incredibly anxious, and they're really uncertain about their future. So we just need to be mindful of everyone's, I guess, mental health and mental state at the moment, and remember that everyone has a different level of resilience. Some might be experiencing a catastrophic financial situation, but they're okay, and then others who may be the opposite. So it's about asking, how can we provide some reassurance to those people, of course, without over-promising as well. And the other thing is, from change management or change leadership, is this notion of a change curve that we all sort of go through, and most people experience this change curve when significant change happens. For instance, there might be that they experience anger and denial in the early stages, and then at some point, you start to bottom out and you start to accept what's happening. But the speed at which that happens for everyone is different. Some people go through it very quickly and accept change very easily, and then some really struggle and just can't progress. In fact, they may even get stuck. So that's just being mindful when we're talking to our team members about where they might be in relation to the uncertain environment and how they're coping with that. And then finally, how can you keep your whole team connected? So you might have 6, 10, a dozen staff, 20 staff, whatever, all working from home. Can you keep them connected in a way that sort of aligns with your culture, your values, and look, might even be fun, because that can be as simple as I had a client comment that somebody had just had a birthday, so they arranged a time for the entire staff to be online, and they all raised a drink to that person to toast their birthday. So, or it could be some other sort of anniversary. So how can you do that? How can you maybe have online dress up days? Fun Fridays. I don't know. So, but how do we keep the whole team connected? And then finally, tip number 10, our well-being. As business owners, being in business, it's the hardest thing you can possibly do, I think, in life. In terms of a path, whether you choose a career or to study, but I think starting a business and running a business is very hard. It's challenging, and right now that is extraordinarily challenging, no matter what type of business you have. So I think there's kind of 3 things here to work on. So one is obviously our own resilience, and there's plenty of things online about how you can do that. Simple things like realizing that that this is a temporary rather than a permanent situation. That it's not personal to you. This is not the universe inflicting itself on you personally. That we're all in the same situation. Seeing this as a challenge, not necessarily an insurmountable obstacle. And I totally appreciate, for some businesses, and there's probably some online right now that their business isn't viable at all. So I know that can be especially difficult, but so there's lots of neat things around that. And the biggest thing from resilience, I think, is just maintaining those relationships, reaching out to people, and being in business is isolating at best of times. So it's even more important now we stay connected. And obviously these webinars are potentially one way we can do that. Motivation, working on your motivation. Rachel touched on thinking about your why from a marketing perspective. Maybe also think about your why from a personal perspective. Why are you in business? Why this business? Why did you start this business? Is it still important to you, or have you just been doing it because it needs to be done? And in starting to try and understand a little bit through self-reflection, what does motivate me, and in particular in the current environment, what can keep me motivated? Someone commented to me that it's their children. They just need to go and look at their children, and that gives them a sufficient level of motivation to keep going. So whatever works. And then thirdly, positivity. There's some neat stuff from the psychology of positivity around the notion that we do have it as backwards as a society, that we think we need to work hard to be successful and then we're allowed to be happy. And that the funny thing is we're actually wired in the opposite way, that if we allow ourselves to be happy in the present time, and I know again how challenging that can be, then we're more likely to be successful. We learn better, we're healthier, we live longer, and we'll be more successful if we're happier in the present. And so again, there's lots of different ways you can do to work on raising your level of happiness or positivity.
Just jump in. The other thing that I think is important in this emotional well-being is maybe look at the language we're using, and this could even be with your communications to your customers and your staff, is let's change some of our language from, and so our mindset can change with that. So an example that I'm doing, I'm not usually referring to the lockdown anymore because it's quite negative, whereas let's refer it to as a stay-in. These subtle things we can do to change our mindset will all help with our emotional well-being. There's a whole heap of examples, and I posted something on our Facebook page the other day, but I'll dig out some more as well and include in the information we send out. But everything we can do to help our emotional well-being through this will mean that we'll come through stronger and happier through the process.
Yep, cool. Thank you, Rachel. All right. So if you haven't heard of Fire Station, I probably should have done this at the start. So we call ourselves a business growth centre. So we work predominantly with entrepreneurs and business owners and those who run charities and social enterprises to teach them how to run their business better, how to run their organisation better, and it's a holistic approach. So we obviously focus on resilience and some of these other things as well, and time management. And thanks to the South Waikato Investment Fund Trust, we also run these programs in the South Waikato as well. So one of the things that we do, of course, is coach. And at the end of every good coaching session, there should be some questions for the participant. And so things like, what are you going to do today? So we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of tips. So what are you going to do today? What are you going to do in the next 7 days? What are you going to do by the end of this month to help keep your business moving forward and to make sure that you, your family, and your team are okay? So that's our challenge to you is to write down your actions and outcomes from this session and any other session that you may be dialing into in the next few weeks. So that's us. Right, question time. Just a reminder, if you've got some questions, we've got some questions.
Yep. So the first question is, do I have to pay my lease while I can't access my building? Surely I don't have to pay my landlord.
So that's a legal question, and that will also depend on the terms of your lease. As you probably would have read, and we would be no different, we would be recommending you talk to your landlord and just explain the situation to them and ask for their forbearance and their assistance through this time. Specifically
ask for a rent holiday, which means you don't pay rent for a period of time, or a rent reduction. So those are the two options, but it will come back to your lease agreement on the term of your lease as well.
Yeah. We actually dug ours out last week, and it had been 3 years since I looked at it last, and it was a good opportunity to remind me of what actually we were entitled to be doing and what the landlord was entitled to be doing. It was a salient reminder. Ask the question. Be firm. We're going to go into a recession. It's going to be very challenging. So, yeah, we all need to get through. All right, is there a second question?
Yep. How do we access the $5,000 scheme with Fire Station?
Yeah, so just on that, so we've been asked to just make sure everyone understands that that's an up to, and there's only a limited pool of funding across the country. So no one should expect that while of course it's free to access, that you might get that much. It might be 90 minutes, it might be 3 hours of time. It just depends on who's approving it and how they deem you need to be helped. So how do we access it? Well, you go directly to the regional business partner. We should be posting these links.
We'll post the link on our Facebook and the council will send it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's accessible anywhere.
Yeah. The third question is, can my boss make me work 40 hours a week from home and only pay me 80%?
So this actually came up yesterday. And I'm going to look at the first answer is going to defer to talk to an HR advisor or an employment lawyer, or ring the EMA's 0800 number and talk to them. But I don't think so. I think the answer to that is I don't think you can. But yeah, you need to get that advice. So the key thing that was emphasised to me was any changes to the employment agreement must be agreed by both parties. So you must agree to that if they're trying to do that. But yeah, get the advice from an expert.
And if you employ staff and can only pay them 80% or pay them the subsidy, make sure you have those conversations with your staff and come to an agreement. But get legal and HR advice on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Next question.
The next question we've already answered. Can you record the webinar? Yes, we are recording this and we will be sending out the link to everyone that was part of the call. And it will also be posted on social media for those that have missed it. And that is it for questions. Anyone else got any questions?
I can see a question from Bruce. If you scroll down.
Oh, yeah, he's saying we need to wrap up because there's another webinar.
Oh, there is two. Okay. All right. Yeah. Any other? Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes. Any other final questions? No? Okay. All right. So we've had a good turnout. So we'll talk to Paul Dolden and Francis Powers and Rebecca about the next one. We were aiming potentially to do one on Friday. So we will organise that, or if not, it'll be definitely the following Tuesday.
Can I just jump in? If you haven't registered on the South Waikato website, you can sign up for emails. Please do, because that's how you will get primarily notified about these webinars and all sorts of other help and advice that's happening for South Waikato businesses. Francis, can you just confirm what that website is so I don't get it wrong?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. It's www.swnz.co. That's swnz.co. That's the single go-to point that we're using. That obviously connects back to the South Waikato and the Swift Trust websites. On there is a business response checklist. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of links. That'll take you to the latest up-to-date information. And I'll just add in there, Darren, about the regional business partners link. So if any of you want to have a look in the meantime while we're organising that, just Google regional business partners. There's a small process you need to go through where you phone the connection person over in Hamilton, and they will refer you to the appropriate service provider in our region. But as I mentioned before, we're looking, Swift has applied to be an overarching one so that we can have a single point of direction there rather than a huge number of one-to-ones. So swnz.co.
Very good. Thank you, Francis. Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge Swift and South Waikato District Council for organising this so quickly. They've pushed us really hard to get us on this and be part of it. So it's full credit to them. Yeah, it's great.
Can you just hang on? Someone wants me to copy that link in the chat, so just let me.
Oh, Rebecca's. Oh, everyone. It's in the chat.
SWNZ.com. Oh, there we go.
Yes, there's no dot. Don't put a .nz on there.
The website link is coming up onto the chat function.
Yeah.
Oh, Francis, everyone else has done it before me. There you go.
All right. All right. Well, look, for those who want to get on the KPMG one, yeah, we'll call it time. We're a little over time, obviously, but yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Cheers.
Excellent. See you guys. Thank you.